Good morning, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of Facilities and Design. So today we're going to be talking about the planning procedure. We're going to be going into how basically we look at how one would design a new facility in terms of food and beverage. We looked at things such as the prospectus and the feasibility study. We have a little bit of an in-class activity that I'll just run through on menu analysis. And then, of course, we'll go into the budget and cost relationship. So the first slide that we talk about is what are the steps in the planning process? So there are 6 steps that we like to take a look at. The very first is planning a prospectus. Then we look into what is our planning team. So who will be doing this design? This could be engineering firms. This could be the actual food and beverage management of the property. This could be the long-term care facility management or the prison management or the mall management, depending on the location that you've chosen. We'll conduct a feasibility study, so taking a look at the actual design process and does it make sense. Looking at the menu analysis, because looking at the menu will really dictate how we design our backhouse specifically, but just in general the whole food and beverage operation. And this is very dependent on serving style, of course. And then we'll consider some desired architectural features and look at the cost versus the funds available, as we often don't have an unlimited budget with this. So first thing is the prospectus. So this is a written description that details the project, and we look at 3 major parts. So what is the rationale? So the rationale is basically looking at what is the goal and objectives that we're trying to meet, and what kind of policies and procedures will have impact on those goals and objectives. As an example, if you are designing a place for a commercial setting versus a long-term care setting, some of those policies and procedures will be quite different. Then we look at the physical and operational characteristics. So this is details about the menu, the food preparation area required, the service. So what is the style of service? Is it, it's interesting to note that the buffet style of service is probably going to be mostly extinct for the next few years anyways, until everyone's vaccinated or we have a different way of doing this. In the employee and customer profiles and just how much business and the timing of that business. So are you a breakfast place, lunch, dinner? Are you an all day? What are your peak periods? And then we also, of course, look at regulatory information. So this is any sanitation or noise control, the different types of energy that we use. So some of the questions you might ask your client, assuming that you're working for somebody else, is the style of food service and how is the menu and the food service production used, how many people. So we did this, the first time we taught this class, it was at Roberta Lodge. Roberta Lodge had at the time, I think, 117 residents, and they would have 3 meals a day. And then snacks were usually served in another room or up in their actual room. So this was the retirement community of the larger whole place. The long-term care were often served meals inside their own rooms. So we looked at how many people were served, what was the dining room requirements, and we found out a huge issue with them is that if everyone showed up to any of the meal times, they would not have enough seating. So they were basing the fact that a few of them were either too sick or too tired or just too busy in which to attend one of those meal periods. Which didn't always work, and sometimes people would have to wait. Now, someone who is on dietary medications and having to wait an extra hour and a half from when they usually eat could be a medical issue. So they had a huge issue there, and they asked actually this class, our class, a couple years back, to go in and come up with some different solutions. So your major project will be similar. We're not going to be in Roberta Place, obviously, for COVID-19 precautions, but you're going to be doing something very similar. So these are a bunch of the questions. I won't go through them all, but those are some of them that you would ask your client. So the planning team, as I mentioned before, will include all of the following. So it could be the owner and the management team. It could be food service design consultants or builders or contractors. And as a planning team, everyone will be responsible for a certain amount of responsibilities. It's a good way to look at it as you will be in groups for this major project. There are about 20 of us in the class, I think 16 of us in the class. I believe the groups are up to 4. Cyril will go through that, but 4 groups of 4, and each of you will have different responsibilities probably on creating floor plans and selecting building materials and equipment and choosing the vendors that we have chosen. These are all the things that we have to kind of assign responsibilities for. The feasibility study is collecting all the data about the market and the other factors relating to the operation of the proposed facility. So if we're, as an example, if we were proposing a new facility, that opens up a lot of different things. So we can really choose where we would like to build our new place. We want to take a look at the community growth and see where it's going to be here today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, some of the market trends that are going on, and other potential revenue sources other than our main source, any competition in the area, and then of course new technology. When we are having new proposed facilities, specifically this is the time to incorporate new technology. If we're doing a redesign of an existing facility, well, let's take a look at all the current ideas that are current things that are happening within their 4 walls. So look at their current issues, look at their current operational standards and their current customers. But then we want to look at how do we add additional revenue sources, or what is our feedback from our clientele? Are we taking too long for our service times? Are they requiring a different style of menu? Is it crowded? Is it hot? Is it too small? Is it too big? All those kind of things. And then innovating our procedures where we can tie in some new technology. It is a little bit more difficult when you're redesigning a new place though. So keep that in mind. You don't want to completely throw out all your point of sale systems and all your reservation systems and all of the ways that you cook every single food item. It might be too much. But where it makes sense, definitely incorporate new technology or innovate some of your procedures. And then you want to do a menu analysis. So the menu typically drives the layout of your restaurant. So what we'll be looking at is not only the food in which that we serve, but also the style of service and how do we cook all of these things. What pieces of equipment are used. And it's usually much more than you might think. If you think, hey, I'm going to serve a steak and I cook a steak on a grill. Okay, but there are the grill portion of it, but it's also, okay, how do we purchase it? When it comes in, how do we store it? After we store it, how do we prep it? From our prep, where do we cook it? And then how do we serve it? And all of those things have to take into some sort of consideration when it comes to the design of the layout. So also as well, you'd look at the popularity of items. So, assuming you do have a steak, that's fantastic. Does it represent 5% of your sales or does it represent 20% of your sales? If it represents 5, you might have a smaller grill. If it represents 20%, you might need a larger grill area. So those are some of the things that we want to take a look at. So this is some of the criteria: the storage type, the portion size or table portion, batch size. So by batch size, I mean we don't make a single pizza dough every time someone orders a pizza. Rather, what we do is in the morning, there's some prep people who will probably make 20, 30, 40, 100 individual portions of pizza dough. So that would be the batch size. So we have to be able to store 100 pizza doughs in our refrigerator system, as we don't make them to order. And that's very similar with a lot of our pastas and a lot of our sauces and a lot of our different food items, that it doesn't make any economic sense just to create them as a single portion size. So that is what we call our batch size. What is the process required? So when do we essentially add heat to our items to cook them? And again, there might be a lot of storing and preparation required before we apply heat for the final time. Utensils required, work surface. Any of you who have worked inside a restaurant understand the importance of having a good workspace. And often, I've seen people creating their workspaces out of rolling carts or putting cutting boards over top of sinks that should be used because they don't have enough area. So we're having enough work surface, which is why in common house design, the island is so popular, is because people love the idea of having all of this area in which to work. And then also what kind of really large pieces of equipment which are going to be mainstays or huge space requirements in your particular design. Right, so those large ovens, those big Hobart mixers, those large hood vents, these are all things that are going to be a very large requirement of the space that you have. And then there are smaller items like maybe a small refrigerator that doesn't have to be that big, or a cooling area. So what a menu analysis would look like is that you would take your particular item, so as an example, spinach salad, and you would start talking about all of the different ways in which that you would analyze this item. So we have to store all of this as a refrigerated item. The portion size is 1 ounce. Table portions are 350. Batch size is 100. The process required is that we have to wash, trim, and drain the spinach salad, so all the spinach that comes in. We would require a knife and a drain pan, a sink, and a counter. The large equipment is our sink and a counter, so that's the same, and we would hold this in a refrigerator. Another item might be a beef patty. So this is just a 1 beef patty, 1 4-ounce beef patty. Again, table portions are 300, and we'll cook them off in portions of 50. We need a grill, you need a spatula, the counter or utility cart, again the grill for the large equipment, and then perhaps a warming oven. So this is more like a fast food area where they might not cook them to order, rather they'll cook off 20, 30, 40, or 50 because they know they're approaching their lunchtime hour and they will be using these within the next 20 or 30 minutes. And then we can also do this for a full dish. So a menu item for 8-ounce sirloin served with a baked potato, seasonal veg, which are green beans and roasted red peppers. And this is basically a keg steak item. So this is what the keg would do as one of their items. So what they would have to do is go through each of the items, talk about the portion size, so 1 8-ounce sirloin, 1 baked potato, 4 to 5 pieces of green beans, and 3 to 4 slices or pieces of roasted red pepper. That's their table portion size and their batch size, because this is all made to order. Then through here, what they would do is say, okay, what is the process required? What is the large equipment required? The utensils, the work surface, so on. So the process required is a grill here. The baked potato will most likely be baked, obviously, in the oven. The green beans and roasted red peppers, they can either be steamed, they can be sauteed. There's a couple different options, which you might just want to rate both. And then write down all of your other equipment here that's required. What you will see in the long term is that we will look at 100 different items that are in our menu. And with that, we can start analyzing and say, okay, our most popular piece of large equipment that's needed is a grill or an oven or a deep fryer. So therefore, that'll dictate how many you might need or the size of surface area your grill should take up in your particular kitchen. The difficult part is that menus change. So seasonal menus change. So we have to ensure that we have enough equipment and room to service the menu that we have, but with enough flexibility that if we need to change something out based on a menu change, that we are able to do so. Not an easy thing to do necessarily, but most of these pieces of equipment are movable. They might be on casters or wheels, and you might be able to, let's say you go into the summer and you find yourself doing a lot more grill items, you might be able to roll out a deep fryer and roll in a smaller additional grill. Those are some of the ways that we can be flexible and adaptable with menus. We also want to look at our architectural features. So flooring is the first one I'm going to talk about. Flooring is very important because it's basically all about safety. Specifically for the back of house. In front of house, flooring is more so cosmetic, but also is a safety issue. So perfect flooring should be impervious to moisture, grease, food stains, and is slip resistant. That's also the most expensive flooring. So hard floors are good for resistance, but slippery when wet and hard on employees' feet. The rough abrasive floors are best, but they do not clean easily because they are rough and abrasive and they hold on to food fibers a lot easier. Carpet is great for guests. It's comfortable. It seems to do well for most people. It's better for falls if you're having like a long-term care, but you can also see that people can trip more easily on carpet, especially if it's bunched up or there's a transition area. Hardwood is beautiful and elegant, but it's quite expensive and it can be porous. Tile is often the most popular in kitchens, and all kitchen floors, as another piece of advice, must go up 6 inches on the wall. So that's for when you're mopping and or potential flood, that you don't get the walls wet or the drywall wet, because that's very porous. It'll absorb the water and can result in mold. So this is just an example right here of that rough abrasive flooring that we're talking about. So this is actually a very good flooring. It's not easy to clean necessarily, because in all these little granular areas a lot of food can be held. They're also doing a lot of stuff that they shouldn't be doing. A lot of this stuff should all be on racks. You know, they have bags of potatoes and all kinds of mix and stuff on racks. But the idea of this is the flooring. So that flooring is ideal. This is probably the most popular because it's cheap. This tile flooring, it's great for when it gets wet. It is very slippery. Although all of your staff should be wearing slip-safe shoes, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not slippery. So you'll see they have drainage areas. This flooring is great, although the grout, so all the grout lines, this is commonly an issue. And you'll see in many factory kitchens that every few years they'll have to come out, they'll de-grout everything, so they'll come in with these special knives, take all the grout out, replace any broken tiles, and then re-grout the whole thing. So it'll happen quite often. But on a plus side, you will notice that everything is off on the ground and it's up on your particular storage. So that's a much better idea of better storage and more safety there. Here is that beautiful hardwood. This can be very slippery, but it's beautiful. So this is the trade-off that you might have, depending on the style of commercial kitchen that you have or commercial operation. If you're a fine dining restaurant, you might offer something like this. But if you're a factory kind of cafeteria, this is wasted on them. And you want to go more with the safe, easier to clean, less expensive option. And you'll see carpet here as well. You know, carpet is great. It's actually great for sound. If it's very inexpensive and easy to replace, it's not a horrible idea, but it can hold on to stains quite easily, and odors and smells. And if it gets very wet, it can also mold. So there's a trade-off there as well. When it comes to walls and ceilings, they always have to be covered and be able to be easily cleaned, and have very little joints, wires, or pipes. So this has to be approved by the health units. So walls in kitchens should be covered with a durable material that is not porous. So no drywall. Or if it is drywalled, then it must be layered again with some sort of reinforced panel. I know at Red Lion Brewhouse it was all drywalled, but then we came in with a very thin, I guess it was fiberglass. It was almost like a plastic panel that we put up all over the walls, specifically in the dish area that has a lot of moisture and humidity. And then same thing with the ceilings. They should be some sort of glossy enamel on them as well. Ceiling height 14 to 18 feet on average. They should be lighter in color. Preferably the whole kitchen is light and bright. That way it's easy to see, it's easy to clean, and it's easy to see if there's any kind of safety issues. You will notice that, so I just have this couple images here. So this is on the dining room, and you may wonder what these things are up on the walls or on the ceilings. So these are little panels that actually absorb sound. So they're just cloth covered little, probably wood frame squares. But what they do is that they help with a lot of the sound, because if it's very open like it is, you'll have this echo, this auditorium echo, and it's horrible. So if you're trying to have a meal, the clanging of dishes back in the dish pit, or a very loud guest talking somewhere else, the noise will bounce all over. So basically what this does is help absorb some of that noise, stops that bouncing of all of that sound all over, and just gives you a little bit of a nicer ambiance. Lighting has been considered the most important factor when it comes to design, and most often the one that's looked over. So the amount of lighting must be adequate for workspaces, but also be efficient and suitable for guest areas. Kitchens are often very well lit because you are handling dangerous things. There's a lot of hot items and a lot of safety concerns with food and cross-contamination. Whereas in some of the actual dining room areas, you might see it dim lighting because it also sets a certain kind of ambiance and comfortability. The way in which we measure light is by foot candles, or feet candles, I suppose. So that's the amount of light inside a 1 square foot sphere is a single light source at its middle. So if you stare directly into the sun, it's called 10,000 feet candles, and this is going to be blinding you. An overcast day may be close to 100 foot candles. Where possible, use natural light as much as you can. It's free, it's beautiful, and what you can do specifically is save yourself a lot of money on your energy use. Also, the intensity of color light is application specific, so recessed fluorescent lighting in the back of house is great in kitchens, and the incandescent or halogen in serving areas is more preferred. So this just gives you an idea of light intensity in foot candles and how you could use this for certain areas. Whereas you are doing a lot of reading recipes and weighing and record keeping and things that require a lot of attention and focus, you want a higher amount. And if you're fine dining, you're sitting in a nice booth, a lower amount of foot candles is preferred. One thing you should keep in mind is that there is a reflective nature of several things. So mirrors, of course, stainless steel, glass, anything with a sheen or a polish to it will reflect. So ensuring that you shine the lights where you want to shine the lights. And think about this as, when you're watching your television. Do you put a lamp and you shine the lamp directly onto the television? It causes glare, you can't see properly. Now this could be a safety concern if you're in the kitchen, and it just could be really quite annoying to the customer if you're in the front of the house. So just be careful. So this gives you an idea of some of these ways that they are lighting up this room without shining the light on the particular customers. This is very well lit, it's quite beautiful, but you can see they're shining all of their light either on the walls or not directly onto the tables themselves. So they have these incandescent lights, they have this light here which is kind of shooting all up on the ceiling, and it's quite beautiful looking. Same with here. You'll see that all of these pot lights here, they've actually have them all tilted to shine on the walls themselves, and the tables, and this lighting here is shining upwards and outwards. So the tables themselves, while kind of dark, the place itself isn't that dark, and it gives that nice intimate kind of feeling. They can also use light to do some really neat things. So this picture here is actually indoors in downtown Toronto. And basically what we're looking at here is that they've created a fake patio. And if you look closely, you'll see all of these plants are fake. They are not trees. All of the walls, while it looks like it might be some sort of vine or shrubbery, it's just like a plastic, fake shrub that they've just stapled to the walls. And you can see the ceiling right here as well. But with the use of some pretty ingenious patio light strands, they kind of like put a nice floor in here, they put some wood accents and some trees. It kind of makes you feel like I'm on an outdoor patio, and it's quite a nice feel to it. And then this here also gives you an idea of that industrial look, but the issues with lighting. So what they've had to do in the ceiling, you can see there's all kinds of metal and stainless steel and piping, and that's fantastic, and people love the idea of it, but they actually put their lighting above it and then put some panels below. So they're trying to, while using some of the reflective capabilities of all that venting and stainless steel, but not shine it directly into the customers who are seated at all those stools you are looking at here. So they put these panels up here to reflect some of that, which is really quite smart. When it comes to design and lighting, you will, I don't know what I did there, you will actually see that they have light floor plans as well. So they may have a regular floor plan, and then what they'll do is usually remove a lot of the detail of the regular floor plan and then have an overlay showing all the different kinds of lighting which would be needed to give to an electrician or an engineering firm, so they're able to ensure they install all the proper fixtures and electrical to be able to do this. So anyways, you can look at this a little bit more detail. That's not going to be necessarily a requirement of you. You will need to do a floor plan. Bonus marks for people who come up with kind of a lighting strategy, but it is not a requirement. And then we also want to talk about heating, venting, and air conditioning, which is HVAC. So we actually have an HVAC program at Georgian College. And essentially what it is we live in a 4-season province. And we have very cold winters and we very hot summers. And we have some weird in-between times. So ensuring a comfortable work environment for all has been guaranteed to improve efficiency from a minimum of 5 to upwards of 15%. Comfortable workers work better. So making sure you place air ducts so customers do not get blasts of cold air is very important as well. Maintaining humidity is important for the comfort of employees, but also very important for food areas. So you want to make sure that you keep your dry, staple foods dry, or in our moist mildew areas such as our dish pits, ensuring there's proper ventilation. And then we also think about positive versus negative air pressure. So when you think about this, think about if you are in kind of a waiting area of a restaurant and somebody opens the door in December from the outside and comes in, do you get a blast of cold air? So if this is happening and you're having 50 to 100, 150 people an hour come in those doors and open those doors, and sometimes they're holding it open, if there's an accessibility issue where they're holding it open for several minutes while they get somebody in, all of that cold air is coming into your restaurant. Not only is it not great for your energy bill, but it's specifically not great for the guest comfortability, and a waste of energy. So we like to look at ensuring that we have a proper positive versus negative air pressure. And this was probably most important, or first really, what's the word here? I'm drawing a blank. It was first really done at hospitals. So hospitals have a big issues where in hospitals, if there is an infectious person, they want to keep them in an area that there is no ability for that infection, that disease, that virus, that bacteria, whatever it might be, to get out of that area. So they would want to have what we would call negative room pressure. So ensuring that negative room pressure, so say if you have a very sick person, and COVID is a perfect example, they would want to put them in this room with a negative room pressure, which means that every time this door opens to admit a doctor, a nurse, a family member, whatever it is, the air from the hallway rushes into the room rather than the air in the room rushes out. So when you think about this, we want this negative room pressure to be in our back of house. So when we open the doors from the kitchen into the dining room, we don't want all the smells and the heat and the burning garlic and all the stuff that's in that kitchen to go out into our nice air-conditioned, nice smelling front of house area, serving area. Rather, we want the cold air from the dining room to come into the kitchen. And it also helps cool it down a little. And then same thing with this. So this right here is when we open the front door as an example. So this is positive room pressure. We open the front door to the restaurant. I would rather have the warm air that we've been warming and circulating inside our restaurant to go outside than the cold air from outside to come in. Both are a bit of a waste. So, you know, having different styles of doors or antechambers or vestibules where it's 2 sets of doors with a little room in between really helps. But really, at the end of the day, you would rather have the warm air go out versus the cold air come in. When we look at the refrigeration of part of HVAC, it's a huge blueprint of your actual design. Refrigeration, so fridges and freezers, take up a huge area. It's often recommended to have 3 separate fridge spaces because we like to cool all of our items at different amounts. One is fresh produce, which is probably the least cooled, and then dairy and eggs, and then another one for meat and poultry. Now, we can't often do that. We don't have maybe the space, the money, or the time, but what we can do is also separate our fridges, as typically the tops of the fridges are the coolest and the bottoms are the warmest, just like your fridge at home. So looking into refrigeration, you want to decide how big of a space you would need. There are a bunch of different options, and the sweet spot is finding a fridge that is almost completely full by the end of it, but not with a lot of room left over. And you can look at a bunch of different options, right? So when it comes to, we also need a food fridge, but then we also might need like a beer, wine, pop, all the other kind of things that we serve, our bar fridge essentially, to keep all of our kegs cool, and that would be at a different temperature as well. So just to give you a couple ideas of some of the different ways that fridges can be designed, you can build it to any of your own specifications. When you're using the Visio program, it's going to be a room. You're going to create a little separate room with a door. Now there could be many different ways that you can design it. This one here is about as small as you can get with maximizing as much storage area, but you can make it bigger with middle aisles. There's a combo fridge that you have to walk into the cooler first and then reach into the freezer. There's something like this here where it has doors, so this would be a perfect bar fridge where you have all your kegs and everything lined up over here, but the reach-ins here are maybe for all of your beer bottles and tall boys, and then wines could be in this one. Convenience stores and cafeterias would have a lot of these walk-in style ones where you can go in there and place not only food, or not only drink, but also food, so pre-packaged sandwiches and salads and things of that manner. And then depending on what you're looking for, there's different combinations. This is a fresh map cooler storage, so please take a look at this and read this a little bit more in detail. So it basically tell you that the things that's closest to the fan, so in your home fridge, usually it's the very top shelf because they shoot the cold air down because cold air falls. But right closest to that fan will be the coldest area. And in that blue zone, closest to the coldest fan area is where you want some of this stuff, versus the purple zone where you want this, and the red zone, and then also the black zone. So this is all basically just a vegetable list of all of the things that we want, but we can look at this from a dairy perspective as well as look at this from a poultry and meat perspective as well. And then it comes to budget and cost relationship. So at the end of the day, when it comes to our major assignment, there is no dollar amount that we are really giving you, or a very limited dollar amount. We want you to have, especially with all of these in-class assignments, we want you to have as much freedom and creativity as possible. But in the real world, what's going to happen is that they're going to give you an idea of what the budget's going to be. Some costs can be negated by lowering operational costs, so it might be a very expensive piece of equipment, but with that you are able to lower the labor cost. So you have a bit of a trade-off there, or might be able to increase levels of service so you can, again, lower labor costs in the front of house. And another option could be lowering operational costs, such as just the energy usage. But at the end of the day, you will have a dollar amount that you need to stay within. So what the idea is to find the most effective, economical means that gets the job done, that is as flexible and adaptable for future changes. And that's a tall order. That's a lot to ask, specifically for you guys, so you have limited experience in design. So when it comes to your major assignment, and when Cyril gives it to you, you're going to be creative with your solutions. And it might not be just one solution. So he's going to give you a problem. He's going to give you a couple floor plans of a current area, and what your responsibility, not to spoil the main project, but what your responsibility will be a full facility redesign, implementing new technology where possible, implementing new procedures where possible, but also redesigning the physical components of this area to ensure that you can serve the amount of people that we need to serve, serve all the different groups of people, accessibility issues and all, as well as providing a really cool and comfortable environment for both employee and guest. It's fun, but it's also can be quite difficult, and one solution might not be it, but rather a series of different solutions where the client can pick which one works best. So that's mostly it for week 2. So it gives you an idea of where you would start when you look at facility design and how you would approach a project that might be given to you. My hope for you as the food nutrition management, that not only will you be worried about what is going into the bodies of your particular clientele that you are serving, but the way in which that we serve them and the environment in which we serve them, and how we can make it as sustainable yet attractive to the customer as possible. So if you're going to watch this week, and I hope you do, we don't have a live class until next week, week 3 at 6 p.m. on Wednesday. At the end of this week, Sunday by midnight, you will be handing in your assignment. Again, if you are not remembering how exactly to go through it, just a few slides here to show you how to go in, select your page size, and how to get started. One thing I forgot to tell you, and I hope you are watching this before you submit. If you go to View, so I'm hovering over View, there's a checkbox that you can select grid lines. So here I'm showing this grid lined space. It just really helps with some of the spacing issues and ensuring that you're giving enough moving room for all of your customers and employees. So have fun with the assignment. Generally everyone that I've ever taught this course, the Visio and the designing and the creativity portion, while maybe a little overwhelming at first, is the most beneficial to them by the end of this. So have some fun with it. It is Wednesday, week 2, and I will see you next week on Wednesday. And please email me if you have any questions or having any problems.